of our interviews for the Board of Regents of the state of New York. I'm Assemblyman Mike Benedetto, Chair of the Education Committee, and we have several interviews to be conducted today. But before I say that, let me make a opening remark, just what we're doing here today. Section 202 of the Education Law provides for the election by the legislature of members of the Board of Regents for the state of New York. There are a total of 12 regents, 13 by judicial district, and 4 elected at large. And when I say elected, I mean by concurrent resolution or by a joint session of Senate and the New York State Assembly. Now, today we're interviewing for Judicial District 2, 4, 9, 10, and for the at-large vacancies. The law further provides that regents must be elected by concurrent resolutions I just stated, concurrent resolution of the legislature, or by joint session of the legislature to happen in the first week of March. If we don't do it in the first week of March, the first Tuesday, then we are forced to have a joint session of the Assembly and the Senate and have a direct election. The Board of Regents oversees the entire educational enterprise of the state of New York. The board's most prominent role is setting learning standards for elementary and secondary education. However, the Board of Regents also regulates 56 licensed professions and registers academic programs at all colleges and universities in the state, including the State University of New York and the City University of New York, SUNY and CUNY. Also within the purview of the Board of Regents are public libraries, museums, historical societies, the State Library, the State Archives, public broadcasting, vocational rehabilitation, and the regulation of proprietary vocational schools. The Board of Regents derives its authority from the New York State Constitution and education law. Specifically, Section 207 of the Education Law grants the board power to exercise legislative functions concerning education policies and to establish rules for implementing those policies. I'm joined today by several of my colleagues in the Assembly and in the State Senate. I'll introduce them, and they will be afforded the opportunity to say a couple words on what we're doing today. Let me start with the chairperson in the State Senate of the Higher Education Committee, Senator Toby Stavisky.
Thank you. Whoops, gotta find the green button. Got it. Thank you. A double welcome, Chancellor, as a regent, but also as my constituent.
Yes.
Good to see you again. We thank you, and we thank all of the regents for the service that they perform. It is a volunteer position, which makes it, I think, even more inclusive and more memorable. And each year we come together, as they have done going back to the start of our nation. We've had regents such as Alexander Hamilton and John Jay, the founders of our republic. And today, we continue that tradition of selecting regents, so we thank you for your service, as we thank all of the people who are volunteering who would like to become regents. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Shelley Mayer, who is chairperson of the Education Committee in the Senate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Chancellor. Good to see you, and glad you're here. This is an incredibly important opportunity for us as legislators to ask questions and get answers from those who seek to be on the Board of Regents or continue to be on the board. It's a tumultuous time in the education space today, particularly given some of the actions at the federal level. And we as legislators, I think of both parties, care deeply that the people who serve on the Board of Regents represent really the best of our commitment to both public education and to the regulation of education through the laws that give the State Education Department a great deal of power. So I really appreciate the opportunity to have the ability to ask questions and get answers and have a frank conversation with those who seek to either continue on or to join the Board of Regents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. To my left is Assemblywoman Hyndman, who's chairperson of the Assembly Higher Education Committee.
Thank you, Chair Benedetto. And as my colleagues have previously said, that this is a momentous occasion that we are in a position to select individuals who set policy for the entire state of New York. That responsibility is not lost on me, and I want to make sure that we are very judicious in who we're selecting for the education of not just our children, but for the adults in this city and this state. And it's very important that we do not take these positions lightly, and the candidates it's a wide selection, and the credentials of the candidates for these positions are really something to behold. I'm excited to hear from you this morning, Dr. Young. Thank you. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Zinnemann.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. I represent the 56th Assembly District in Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn, and I've had the opportunity over the years to work with our chancellor, so welcome to you today. Thank you. But I'm here today not only as a legislator, but as a parent and a organizer, one who served in schools in District 13 on several levels, and that's from just being a parent to my child, being a member of the PTA and leadership, the school leadership team, ran for school board, and to this day spent a lot of time in the 4 school districts that I represent, District 16, 13, 14, and 17 in Brooklyn. And so I carry with me today the voices of all of the parents and children who understand the importance of education and who look to the leadership of our regents and the legislature to make sure that we are not only funding education equitably, but we are providing them with the best education that New York State has to offer. And so my questions today and my advocacy today and reflection today on the resumes that we are reading will be based on the thousands of conversations that I've had with those parents who really want the best for their children and the best for the state of New York. So thank you.
Assemblymember O'Farrell.
Good morning, Dr. Young. It's an honor to sit before you this morning. And I represent parts of Nassau County and Suffolk County. Thank you for your commitment to education in this state. This is a very, very important meeting that we're having with you today, and I'm just looking forward to hearing your story.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Assemblyman Otis.
Thank you, Chancellor, for being here. And people, probably everyone here can tell the same story. You've been to my district. You've been to Westchester County. You're very hands-on in terms of getting involved with the issues that come up on the ground. I think that is important to reflect for all of us something that we have in New York that is unique. We have a Board of Regents that is independent of the executive branch, that is, in a sense, independent of the legislature once one is appointed. to serve as an entity that focuses on education policy without interference in a lot of things that we see around the country that are very disturbing, censorship, interference with what is taught, and not moving education forward. You have been a great leader in terms of the Board of Regents and in partnership with the Commissioner, so we look forward to continued good work together. But we should all take note of the fact that we have a system that is unique in this country, and it is something of value, and that we should acknowledge and treasure that independence. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Assemblymember Simon.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Benedetto. And it's a pleasure to be here this morning, Dr. Young. And I certainly want to plus one to many of my colleagues' comments, and thank you for your leadership, particularly as we've been moving forward with the Path Forward Action Plan for Literacy, which is so critical to the students in New York State. So thank you very much for that.
And last but not least, the ranker on the Assembly Education Committee, Long Island Assemblyman Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chancellor, for joining us. And it's always good every year when we spend time speaking to those who wish to serve on the Board of Regents as you do. I know that on behalf of millions of school-age children across the state, we do appreciate your service and leadership, the service of Dr. Betty Rosa and her leadership as well. So we're hoping to find some great people that like to serve with you on the board. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. And before I go to you, Mr. Chancellor, I want to acknowledge the presence, I guess, showing support for you of one of your other regents, regent from the Bronx, Aramina Ferrer. Thank you for attending today's meeting. Mr. Chancellor, you're here. We thank you for being here. We just want you to say a few words, tell us about yourself, and why you should be considered to be part of the Regents, and make it a short statement, if you would, for 3 minutes, and then we'll do some questions.
Sure.
And let's just have a casual conversation.
Sure, thank you.
The mic is yours, sir.
Thank you, and good morning. I come to the position as an at-large regent, first appointed in 2008, after a long career in public education in New York City. As some of you know and may have heard, I was part of the New York City administration and leadership for over 35 years. And then in 2008, I had the humbling experience of being appointed to the Board of Regents. It's been my honor since 2008 to serve the children, family, youth, and educators of New York State. And it has been my vision that my presence would make a difference. I should say that when I came to the board, quite frankly, I had no aspirations for leadership. I actually came to serve. And I think it's important to know that. I mean, I would put it in this context. The seat that I hold, the at-large seat that I hold, was established in 1968, and it was held by Dr. Kenneth B. Clark. And I'm sure you all know Dr. Clark and his work around getting us to Brown 1954. He held that seat for 20 years. And on his retirement, Dr. Adelaide Sanford, someone that I consider to be a mentor, became the at-large regent. So there have been two people in the seat that I currently hold. Now, I say that not with any self-aggrandizement. It's just to highlight the enormous respect and obligation that I feel to the people of New York State to continue the vision of those two education giants. You know, we wouldn't be talking about equity if it hadn't been for Dr. Clark. We wouldn't be talking about can schools improve if it hadn't been for Dr. Adelaide Sanford. And I think it's important that people who serve the schools, families, communities of New York State understand the history of how we got to where we are, but more important, have a vision to ensure that all children can learn. And I think that's really the critical point here. And I think that's the contribution that I bring to this, because I sincerely believe that what distinguishes one group of students from other groups of students is that in New York State, we have some of the best schools on the planet. The problem is they're not available to everyone, and they're not available for a variety of reasons. But I think they're reasons that can be fixed. I'm a strong believer in opportunity. I know that opportunity is motivating. It's been motivating in my life, and as I work with young people across the state and I visit schools, it's clear to me that when youngsters have the opportunities they need, when staff have the opportunities they need to improve their skills, when parents and families have the information that they need, then children can be successful. Thank you.
I just want to recognize the Chancellor, thank you for your opening statement. I'll turn to my colleague, Ms. Hyman.
Dr. Young,
Yes.
being that you've elevated to the position you have now on the Board of Regents and speaking with the lens of equity and access, what more should the Regents be doing in order to make sure that students have access to good schools throughout the entire 62 counties, which you have the ability to shape and form in the position that you currently hold?
Thank you for that question. And quite frankly, that's the thing that keeps me up at night. You know, how do we make sure that our behavior matches our rhetoric? The challenge, quite frankly, is not how do we do just one thing. I think that we all understand that the business of educating children is a very complicated business. It's not just one thing. You know, there was a time that we thought that if youngsters achieved a particular score on a test, we thought they had made it. And I think we all agree now, and there's tremendous evidence to support what I'm going to say, is that there are a variety of ways that young people need to have at their disposal to demonstrate their brilliance. And it's up to educators to address that. So to your question, the first thing that we have to do is make sure that we have the right policies in place. We're the Board of Regents, we're the chief stewards of education, but we're also the policy makers of education. And quite frankly, how we communicate our expectations for the over 730 some odd school districts is through our policy. So we have to make sure that we have the right policies in place that will drive the guidance for those school districts to implement the kinds of local programs that are needed so young people can improve. The second thing that we need to do beyond the policies is to ensure a system of what I would describe as equitable accountability. We need to have better mechanisms to ensure that we are actually monitoring the progress toward the vision that we have. Right now, and I said it earlier, we have some of the best schools on the planet, but then we have some other places. And quite frankly, the burden of of low performance, the burden of when schools are not working, shouldn't just rest on the backs of families and communities. We have a responsibility to figure out better ways to ensure that all schools are places where we would want our children to attend, and that's something that I'm committed to. The other, and I mentioned this idea that it's not just the score, but I want to be clear about something. We're about learning. The purpose of schooling is learning. Now, we can debate how we define learning, but we can never debate the purpose of school. And so we have to have clear ways of communicating to communities, to parents, how their children are performing in school. That's critically important. We have to have better ways of communicating to staff, to teachers, to principals, that they need to have a better handle on what needs to be implemented locally to ensure that children are learning. And the final thing I would say is that results matter. You know, we can't complicate education, right? Results matter. The question for us are, what results are we looking at, and what results are we using as the yardstick to determine if learning is occurring? My personal opinion on this is that we have to have multiple measures. You know, that's why we have on the Board of Regents, we're in the process of implementing the graduation measures. We believe that attempting to measure student performance on one measure is faulty. And it's faulty for a variety of reasons. We know that, and the data will support this, that there are lots of young people right now who have passed 5 Regents examinations, and then they get to the door of college and have to take remedial courses. That's unacceptable. And that also suggests that, in fact, if they pass those examinations, that they really weren't prepared to be successful at the next level. That suggests that we need to do something else. We need to have different approaches, but more importantly, we have to have a variety of ways where young people can demonstrate what they know and what they can do. And that's what the Blue Ribbon Committee is committed to. And it's our hope, with the support of the legislature, that we'll have the resources to actually execute on the recommendations that have been broadly accepted across the state.
Chancellor Young, thank you very much for your answer. And far be it from me to correct or talk this way to the chancellor, but be mindful of the time of your answers. Okay. Senator Stavitsky has indicated to me that she has a question for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question, but I am so happy you mentioned Dr. Clark, because in the, I can't remember, the late 60s when he became a regent. As you know, my husband was in the legislature, and in fact was one of Assemblymember DiBenedetto's predecessors as chair of the Education Committee. But Leonard was a student of Dr. Clark's at City College, and I think he taught I think Dr. Clark taught psychology.
Yes.
And Leonard was absolutely thrilled to be able, as a member of the committee, to speak on Dr. Clark's nomination as a regent. And he certainly is one of the names that come to mind when we talk about the contributions, not just to New York State, but to the entire country. My question concerns a story. As you know, I chair higher education, and I know you served on the Higher Education Committee of the Regents. And I was very troubled by the story in the Times about the cuts to the NIH budget and the research that goes on that really can be life-changing for so many people. How do you anticipate, or what can the regents do to offset some of these terrible cuts, not just the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education, but the research that flows out of our grant money. Because this is going to be devastating, obviously, to SUNY and the independent colleges and so on.
Yeah. Well, a couple of points. The first is, you know, I equate what you described as we're in what I would call a moral moment, and it cries out for moral leadership. And so what I've said to my colleagues is that in moments like this, this is a moment where we have to stay the course. For example, we passed, one of the first policies that was passed on the board when I became chancellor was the diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. People ask me, well, why did I do that? And I quite frankly said that's the jumping off point. See, you know, the whole notion of equity is not that we just do the analysis, but we also figure out what we need to provide to each young person. The other thing about that is it's incumbent upon the board to use the information that we know about learning and communicate it broadly. So when we talk about doing away with the institutions that provide the research answers to the field, that's perhaps one of the most important areas that we have to figure out how to protect. And it is incumbent upon all leaders, in my opinion, that we have to echo and communicate what we know works broadly, and we have to do it in a way that we're communicating effectively to a variety of audiences. I'll give you an example. What we know about early learning and early childhood development has changed drastically in the last 10 years. We're actually smarter today about how children grow, learn, and develop than we were 10 years ago. Yet, in many of our institutions, we haven't kept pace with that knowledge. Another area, the Assemblywoman mentioned the Path Forward initiative. We've known for the last 50 years about the foundational elements for the teaching of reading, yet many of our young people are going through school and they haven't been exposed to those foundations. And we wonder why we have the kinds of outcomes that we have. And so it's important, I believe, that we not get caught up in the flavor of the moment, but that we use the research to support the actions that we take in schools and districts across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chancellor. We've been joined on the panel by Assemblywoman Walker. Thank you. Ms. Zimmerman, did I call on you yet? No? Your chance.
Thank you. This year marks the quarter of a century into the 21st century. And technology has leaped us all into a frontier unknown. And so I want to talk to you about how, when we look at our pre-K and college programming, and as we think about how we prepare students for the world of work, what else are you planning to do, and what else do we need to do to better prepare our students to get through education with the assistance of AI, but not being driven by AI, but certainly into the world of work as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no real easy answer, so I'll start with the last statement that you made about AI. We really can't be afraid of AI. I think that, again, this gets back to the question of research. We have to know how to use it effectively, and we have to be clear about what AI can do for learning and what it can't do, how it can help us, but also what are those pitfalls? So for me, the question is, how do we use technology to augment learning? The other thing that we have to do is we have to re-examine the structures of education. For example, we know that early college programs happen to work. We know this. The research tells us this. Whenever you visit an early college program or a P-TECH program and you look in the eyes of the students, you know it works. When you talk to the faculty and the teachers, they tell you about the excitement and the enthusiasm of students. And so our notion of K-12 has to change, and that's why on the board we talk about K-20, a P-20 experience, because it's important that all young people have a successful post-secondary experience. And I'm saying post-secondary because, yes, maybe some youngsters are not going to go directly to a four-year institution, but every young person coming out of high school needs to have a post-secondary experience in learning something so they can be successful at the next level. So we can't, it's not the way it was years ago where a kid could graduate from high school and be lucky enough to move into a trade without any further training. That world is over. That's something in my history. But in the world that our young people are going to be adults in, we don't even know what that world looks like. So we're actually preparing them for something that doesn't exist. So we have to be nimble, we have to be creative, and we have to be innovative in our approach. But I do think we have to have a system that is actually a seamless system that takes young people, and I'll say, from zero to success.
Thank you, Mr. Chancellor. Senator Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much. One of the points that you made in your comments, which I think many of us agree with, we have some excellent K through 12 schools in the state, and we have some that have disappointing results. It's a challenge. The Board of Regents has tried several ways to address it, and I particularly appreciate, as you know, all of the focus on young men of color in our urban districts particularly. What do you think are some of the long-term, but maybe even shorter-term strategies that we as a state should adopt, both in the Board of Regents and maybe through legislative help, to address this outcome disparity more effectively than we have? Looking at some of the scores, I realize they're not everything, but I'd be very interested in it's a challenge for us, and I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Well, again, I think there are a variety of things that we have to do, and I would caution all of us to understand that it's not a mystery. I think we know how to educate children. I think what's really gotten in the way is, do we have the will to do what we need to do in every community across the state? And I say that very, very directly. Place matters. And that's not something I'm happy to say publicly, but place matters. If you look at, and everyone here knows exactly what I'm talking about. There are places in New York, if you're fortunate enough to live there, you will have a wonderful education. And then there are other places that if you're unfortunate to be in, generation after generation have not been educated. So there needs to be the will first to ensure that the opportunities are available to all students. The next thing that needs to happen, I believe, is we have to have the support systems for both families and staff. We can't assume that because things are not happening the way we want, that people woke up one day and said, we want to go to work and do a bad job. It's been my experience that when you give, and I'm talking about staff right now, when you give educators the tools, you give them the wherewithal to do the job that needs to be done, and you're there to support them, then you can hold them accountable, and then children will learn. The other point that I think is critical, learning doesn't only happen in school, right? There have to be support systems for children at home. There have to be support systems for children in the community. There have to be support systems for children after school. And so, for me, the question becomes, how do we ensure that we have those systems? Now, all of you have heard about community schools. I believe that community schools is part of the solution, that it really allows the school to become a hub of a variety of support services for children and families. And that's one model. The other model, and you heard me say this earlier, we mentioned the path forward. We have to make sure that when teachers are in the classroom in front of children, that number one, they know who those children are and how they learn. And we refer to that in the jargon as a culturally responsive approach, right? We have to make sure that teachers know about the children in front of them, not the children they used to have or the children they wish they had. They have to know who are the children in front of them, and it doesn't really matter where they came from. So that speaks to their preparation. The other thing that suggests is that K-12, and that's why I said the idea of P20, that we have to work very directly with higher education. You know, higher education, how we prepare people to work in schools becomes critical. Both teachers, school leaders, superintendents, and so there are several levels to this that need to happen. But I think most importantly, and what I worry about with all of these mandates and things that we're hearing about coming out of Washington, that we don't lose sight of what we know. Diversity is important. Diversity is our strength. That's a fact. Equity is how we help each other. You know, anyone who's ever worked with more than one child knows that you can do one thing for one child, but that's not going to work for another child. And it's important that we know from a very personal level what will motivate young people to do well in school. And that's about relationships. And I hate to be too much in the weeds, but it's not just about being smart. You have to believe and have confidence in the community that you work in, with the children that are in front of you, that they can benefit from the kind of instruction that you're applying. That's important. And I think we have to have such, I should say, environments where we can actually talk about this.
Thank you, Regent Young. I just want to mention that we've been joined at the table by Assemblyman Burrows. Okay, Ranka Smith.
Thank you, Chancellor, again for being here. I'm going to try to keep my question brief, and you know, we've had you for a lot of time, and I don't want to take up too much of your day. I know we have an outstanding education system here in the state of New York. It does dismay me when people say that states like Florida have surpassed us, and I don't believe that to be true, but I will tell you, I agree with your point about how we're assessing young people. The 3 through 8 assessments, I know they're federally mandated, but I think that they're a terrible assessment on children. 75% of my district are not taking the exams, which also makes it a problematic metric because, you know, we're not really able to compare apples to apples. I was a former math teacher. So is there any way that we can, and I fully support the Portrait of a Graduate, I think it's receiving great support, but do something like that where I can go to my community. I know, you know, the schools that I represent have, you know, and you mentioned some things on Long Island, 97, 98% graduation rates. But then when the editorial board rolls out the results of the scores, they're saying, wait, we only have a 40% proficiency in this. So I know that that is not an accurate assessment, but I don't have anything, metric to compare. Do you have any thoughts on this? Because it would help policymakers
Sure,
defend and.
I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I'll just be very specific. We have to be careful in our analysis. So when someone says we're going to compare the results of the NAEP assessments to the scores in New York City to the scores in Florida, you have to understand, number one, that in New York State, only about 2,000 children were assessed. So the NAEP assessments are not an assessment that we give to all students. That's number one. Number two, and we only give it every 4 years. So we don't even give the test every year. So if you're asking me, do results matter? I already gave you the answer. Results do matter, but the results on what? And so, in my opinion, to answer your question, I think you have to assess regularly, and those of us who work with children and those of you who have children know that when the teacher communicates to you as a parent, this is where your child is in September, and they come back to you in December and say, this is where your child is, and this is what we need to do, or they're making progress or they're not making progress, and they come back to you in April and say, well, this is where they are now. Here's what happens.
And I don't mean to, I apologize because I did want to get one comment, if that's okay.
You're not going to make one comment. We do have a time limit. But
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Chancellor.
Smith. Regent Young, please finish up your statement.
Yeah, well, all I was going to say is that the best assessments are the ones that can demonstrate growth. And that's what parents are interested in. That's what teachers are interested in. And I think that's what should guide the assessments that we give to children. They should be able to demonstrate that children are growing as a result of going to school.
Thank you, Mr. Chancellor. Assemblyman O'Farrell.
Yes, good morning again, Dr. Young. I'm just going to try to be brief. I see here that you've done a great many things within the school educational system. You implemented an organized strategy to identify and prepare talented individuals of color to become school administration and supervisors. Can you speak on that success?
Sure. I right now mentor a number of aspiring and current leaders across the state. And what I found, quite frankly, one of the reasons why we have so few people of color going into the field of education is particularly males. And by the way, this is not only anecdotal, this is supported by research, is that many of the males will tell you that when they get hired in school, particularly males of color, they're hired to be deans, they're hired to do lunch duty, they're hired to be disciplinarians. Very rarely are they put in a situation where they're appreciated for what they came into the profession for, and that's teaching. And so I think we have to watch the way in which we treat them when they come into the system. That's number one. Number two, we have to understand that the work that we do in schools is hard work, right? It's not easy. And so people need support. What I found, when I say I mentor, this is not like I call you up every 3 months. This is really about sitting down with people and being able to roll up your sleeves and help them work through the problems that they're having. What I found is when there's the kind of support systems in place in schools and districts that are actually there on the ground, helping them solve the problems that they have in their schools and districts, that's more productive than sending them off to conferences and feel-good opportunities that don't really accomplish much. The next point about preparation is it's the same thing I said about learning. What's important about preparation is how does it change your behavior as a professional in the classroom. And so the kind of support that needs to be available to teachers and administrators has to be the support that's designed to get them to change their behavior. Because quite frankly, that's the only thing you control. So I know as a professional, the only thing I control is what I do. I don't really control what you do. And if I want to make the situation better, then I have to change my behavior. And so the question becomes, do I have the skills, the knowledge skills, and dispositions necessary to make those kinds of behavior changes, and are those support systems in place?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your answer.
Mr. Otis.
Chancellor Young, great to have this opportunity. In your opening statement, you emphasized the policy-making role of the Board of Regents. And over the years that you've been on, and in recent years especially, there have been new initiatives that the Regents have rolled out. Be interested to know your assessment of what has been most successful in terms of getting its way down to the school districts and implementation, and what areas of new initiatives that have been, in a sense, most frustrating, where we need to do more work, maybe find more resources to help you do that work.
Well, I'll give you one that everyone here is probably familiar with. I think, and this happened with the support of the New York State Legislature, is the implementation of the My Brother's Keeper initiative. I think that by all measures, that's been one of the most successful initiatives that we have. In fact, this weekend, we have the fellows, the MBK fellows will be in Albany, demonstrating and talking about what the impact of that initiative has been. Now, it's been so successful that with the increase in resources that the legislature made available, we're now taking what we've learned about helping young men and we're expanding it to help young women. And so that's a perfect example of a policy that's worked and then how we're using it to help more students. There are a couple of others, and again, you ask what the board does. The board, we're important, we're independent, but quite frankly, we can't do a lot without the support of the legislature. Here's one that we should be standing on every corner talking about. The results of HEOP in New York State is actually groundbreaking. And I'm sure you know, but if you don't, it was originally started to help non-traditional college-going students graduate on time. What we know about the results of HEOP right now is that young people that go through an HEOP program graduate from college in 4 years at a higher rate than traditional college-going students. Now, that's something that everyone should know. We should be immensely proud of that. We have young people who have the demographics that many associate with failure that are going on their doctors, their attorneys, their MBAs, all because of a support system that this legislature put in place. So what I'm suggesting is it can't be done without resources. You're absolutely right. But I think if we were to look at some of the recommendations in the Blue Ribbon Committee report around the expansion of different learning opportunities, right now in New York State, we're still using Carnegie units as a vehicle for determining credit in high school. Carnegie units is almost 200 years old. And it's about seat time. It's not about what you know. And so I think, again, if we could ever get to the point where we could actually implement these recommendations, we will see more young people flourishing in school. So what I would say to you is that we have to have a situation, quite frankly, and I've said this to my colleagues, where we have to have more of, I was going to say more of these conversations. I don't really mean that. But we need to have more opportunities where we can sit down with the legislators and talk about the kinds of initiatives that we're considering and the kind of support that's needed. And we need to be clear about how that's going to make a difference in the communities that you represent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Assemblywoman Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chancellor. As an EOP student from SUNY Purchase, who went through many of those programs, I am truly owe a debt of gratitude to the legislature for establishing such a program. And it sort of brings me to my question. I went to AI and asked, what question should I ask New York State Regent Lester Young? And in line with Title I and the potential cuts that we may be receiving as a state, what strategies, this is the question, are being implemented to ensure equity in educational opportunities across diverse districts in New York State?
There are several. The first is that through the leadership of our commissioner, we've issued guidance to every district around how they, in fact, outlining their obligation for protecting the programs that will help children, number one. Number two, it's important that we don't adopt a one-size-fits-all strategy, because I think that has demonstrated over time that that hasn't worked, that we need to give young people what they need, but more important, we have to give communities the kind of support that meet the expectations of the adults in the community. The way I say it, I actually said it to some school leaders recently. When is the last time you actually met with your parents and asked them what do they expect from your schools? I think that's critically important. We tell them what we expect, but we're not always open to hear what they expect, and I think that's important. Number three, I think, is the whole issue of relationships. Here's what I have found, and one of the leadership lessons that I've learned over time. There's nothing stronger in a learning situation than relationships. When you think about the teacher that's had the most impact on you, it's probably because, yes, the teacher was smart, or yes, they knew their subject area, but the teacher took a personal interest in you. And I know I've talked to students, and they've told me, quite frankly, that what got them through. In fact, a young woman said to me recently that in our school, we're like a family. And I think that says a lot about what young people expect. When they feel that they're in an environment that supports them and believes in them, they can flourish. When young people feel they're in an environment where they're not supported, they act predictably. They're absent, they're apathetic, and they're angry. And so for me, I think we have to be thoughtful about what we want in schools. And I believe it's important that we have a more, what I would call holistic, collaborative approach on what we want to do and offer in schools.
Thank you, Mr. Chancellor. And to close, Assemblywoman Simon.
So thank you very much for responding to everyone's questions. When I first moved to Brooklyn 100 years ago, I taught at LIU in the developmental skills program. I taught a course called Critical Thinking, which was really reading for those kids who weren't matriculating. And the overwhelming feeling I had when doing that was that they didn't know English. that they didn't have basic language, which is part of what has propelled me for the next 40-some years to be looking at how our teachers know how to teach reading, because the impacts for our young people are so profound. The students in my class who were educated in Nigeria knew English better than the kids from the neighborhood. There are a lot of initiatives that we've done, but I think we come down to fundamentals and the fact that sometimes higher ed and K through 12 are on kind of parallel universes. What are the regents doing, and what are you doing to help connect those dots better?
Well, it's been mentioned a few times, the Path Forward initiative. I will say that the research around reading and language development is actually about 50 years old, although lots of people have, they're talking about the science of reading. I very rarely even use that expression because I think the science is really around learning and development. But I think the practice of how we teach reading, we've known how to do that. We've just gotten away from it. And I think, unfortunately, too many teachers have come out of the preparation programs and they haven't been taught. So it is our hope through the Path Forward initiative that we will change that. In fact, one of the initiatives that we're currently embarked on is how do we in fact transform teacher preparation in New York State so that we can ensure that when a teacher exits and completes that program, that they're ready to teach all children. I think that's critically important. It makes no sense to me that we know our system is going to be more diverse, not less diverse. And so it means that we have to be in a position to accommodate a wider range of behaviors. And you have to be armed with the knowledge and skill of how to do that. So we're starting our vision of Path Forward. We're starting with how do we impact the quality of teaching that occurs in every school. And I think once we do that, we'll begin to see a difference. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that there's no substitute for language development. Although I'm always cautious that, youngsters have language. We just aren't always as familiar with the language. And so it's important that we make sure that our teachers really know, and I said this earlier, know who the children we're teaching and how they learn.
Mr. Chancellor, we thank you for your time here today, for answering all these questions and answering them with substance. We thank you. There's no reason why they've chosen you to be the leader of the board. Thank you, sir, and we'll be in contact very soon with you.
Thank you all. And I apologize if my answers were a little too long.
Oh,
but thank you.
it's okay. You answered well.
Thank you. It's nice seeing everyone.
Well, we're a little behind. The next is Regent Francis Willis from Judicial District 9.
Chairman, put me on the list.
You're on the list. I'll put you on the list. Well, you get on the list when you get a chance to. That was Wheaton. Regent Willis, we welcome you here today. Thank you. And we apologize for the long wait I'm sure you had outside. But we're here just to have a conversation with you today. I'm Assemblyman Mike Benedetto. I'm sitting with my colleagues in the Senate and in the Assembly, okay? And we want to hear from you. Nice casual conversation. And so the way we have this set up is you begin, you tell us a little bit about yourself, what your vision might be on the Board of Regents. We have given you all of 3 minutes to do that in, and then we'll ask you some questions, okay?
Yes,
and we
of
just
course.
want to have a nice dialogue
Yes.
with you.
Excellent. So I will,
Is your microphone on?
oh, I think
There
so.
should be a green button.
Yes, it's on.
Okay.
So I will start with a statement, which I believe you received at one point, but I think because it was done with some thought, I'd like to use that in my discussion, my introduction to myself. As a regent since 2020, just before the pandemic, actually it was 2 days or something when I was elected before the closure, I've had the honor of enjoying the leadership and vision of Chancellor Lester Young and collaborating with a caring, dedicated, and passionate Commissioner, Dr. Betty Rosa. Leadership is essential, great leadership. I believe that this team has created a genuine, focused community among the NYSED staff and Board of Regents on behalf of the children and families in the state of New York. This is the kind of community that I hoped that I have created in the schools and school districts where I was the superintendent, and I feel that right now, I know that in our institution here at the Regents. Our focus from the beginning has been on assuring that all students in New York State have the opportunity to achieve a good life through access to resources that an excellent education can offer. For me, what happened to me in junior high school, that was junior high school then, in 1958, was a teacher coming to me and saying, "You should apply for Hunter High School, Hunter College High School. I want to see you apply." My parents didn't really know that much about that system, and I applied, and I was granted access to incredible resources. And that really shaped the path of my life. That's what life is about, learning the resources, the people you meet, the kinds of relationships you build. I've been fortunate to be a Regent representative on the Blue Ribbon Commission, developing recommendations for graduation measures and the portrait of a graduate that promise a more inclusive and comprehensive perspective on the definition of success and worthiness to achieve a New York State diploma. That's important. The definition of success and worthiness. It's not merely passing the algebra regents. I have served as the co-chair of the Cultural Education Committee, and for the past 3 years as co-chair of the State Aid Committee. As a member of the P20 work group, P12, P20, and higher education committees, as well as serving on the Professional Practice Committee, I've been a full participant in the activities of the Board of Regents. More recently, I was appointed to the National Association of State Boards of Education, NASB, and have participated in monthly meetings that allowed me to obtain a national perspective on issues facing other states. And this was one of the most fascinating learning experiences as the representative from another state said that we needed to change our comments about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And therefore, NASB came up with its own definition: access, opportunity, and resources. When I heard that discussion, it taught me something that I could never learn just from watching TV news. This was real. This was what was happening across the country. My passion for arts education as a universal pathway for intellectual and social-emotional growth has led to efforts to promote more equitable models for arts programming. I also believe that my knowledge of the foundation aid formula obtained as a sitting superintendent in New York State for 22 years has enhanced my work on the State Aid Committee. Moreover, as a member of the Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents throughout my professional life in New York, I have developed collegial and supportive relationships with district leaders, which I believe have helped to build communication bridges and collaborative relationships throughout the region. I've also had exceptional relationships with the teachers I worked with, and I have the greatest respect for the teaching community, especially today. They are in a great time of anxiety, and we must support them. Since I began my service, I have felt a bond with my predecessor, Regent Judith Johnson, whom I knew as a respected and beloved colleague. Her passion for justice and equity have guided my intentions and enriched my efforts. I still have her photograph from her memorial on my desk, and it's a reminder to keep moving and keep working at the charge. I have attempted to follow with energy and purpose Regent Johnson's attention to the disturbing decline in educational loss at the East Ramapo School District, which used to be one of the greatest districts, one of the finest in the state of New York. I believe that in collaboration with the Commissioner, Chancellor, and my colleagues at the Board of Regents, who are moving ahead toward a more just and equitable path for public school students in the East Ramapo District. I'm particularly grateful to the legislature for supporting the monitors that are there now, because they are an excellent group, and they are working with East Ramapo, a new administration, to build a relationship with the community that is greatly needed with the public school students in that district. I met with the parents and community members last spring in a large community meeting. The Chancellor led the next meeting, and we made assurances to the parents that we would be vigilant in working toward equitable solution to a disturbing reality of dwindling resources and opportunities for public school students. Much has been accomplished with two new well-qualified monitors, experienced and dedicated principals, a new highly qualified and dedicated assistant superintendent of multilingual education, and a dynamic, experienced and caring bilingual interim superintendent. Certainly more work is needed to deliver a just solution, but there is a persistent promise to succeed on behalf of the students. To further Regents' efforts to promote opportunity and resources, I've also served on the My Brother's Keeper Committee and connected with the Holocaust and Human Rights Center in Westchester. I go there regularly to hear their presentations and meet with students, to support their student programs, and collaborating now on the Holocaust update of the learning standards. During my visits to school in the regions and through many presentations at various events in a variety of settings, I've learned a great deal about the diversity of needs, resources, and student life in the Hudson Valley. I appreciate the enthusiasm and energy of our educators as they face new challenges that have emerged from the pandemic experience. In my conversations with BOCES and district superintendents, I've heard about new concerns due to teacher shortages in critical areas and have witnessed the inspiring results of creative approaches to growing teachers in local schools. I was recently in White Plains, where they have a wonderful program for growing teachers there. Traveling to school districts throughout the Mid-Hudson region, I have observed various approaches to ensure that cell phones are effectively removed from instructional spaces with student approval and relief. Listening to the students talk about a better situation for them has been critical. It is clear to me we have much to learn from each other, and that we will need to support our educators and students through the coming years in order to fulfill our aspirations for public education in New York State, where the value of education has never been questioned. As we strive toward continuous improvement and success for all, our ethic of care sustains our hopes and dreams for the future.
Thank you very much, Madam Regent. We welcome to the panel Senator Bino, who was with us yesterday and has come back today, and we're glad. Well, thank you for your statement. Okay, I shouldn't say this, okay, but is there a problem among the regents as far as what 3 minutes means? Okay.
Yes, that is a problem. I acknowledge that.
I'm sorry, and I apologize to you, but it
You
just
know,
fascinates me.
I just think that if there's a statement, it should be what we really believe in,
We
so
understand.
that you understand who we are and who I am.
And to get to that, talk to me, if you'd be so kind, the school ban, phones.
The cell phone ban.
Yeah, there you go. Tell me, you got an opinion on that?
Well, I do. I do have a very strong feeling about it. Of course, as many of you may have read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. It's a bestseller, so it must have some meaning to many people. And I think the idea of not having cell phones with students during instructional time is critical, because cell phones are not just what students use to receive messages. Cell phones give kids a sense of self-image. They attack their self-images. They create anxieties that have nothing to do with your instructional space. And when you talk to students about the cell phones and how they affect them, they'll be honest with you about it. However, I do not agree with the idea of a wholesale mandate. I believe that we have a local school ethos, in a school district ethos in New York State. And that means that school districts need to make this determination and need to figure out the best way. When I was in Middletown, it was really effective. I could see that. And they did have, however, spaces when students were not in instruction where they could access, and they did have the students feeling that they really could focus and that they really could exist without the cell phones in their hands during an instructional period. So I think this is a subtle issue. It's not something that we handle with, this great force, but rather, let's understand the subtleties of the situation and what these students deal with in social media. It's not a world that we are from.
Thank you for your wisdom. Assemblywoman Hyndman.
Thank you, Dr. Wills. Your Region 9
Yes,
encompasses Yonkers School District.
yes.
Can you speak to what you see some of the issues are there and how you, as a region specifically for that area, in the time that you've been appointed, have worked to
Yes.
see how you can be helpful?
Well, first of all, I visited a few times, but also I worked very closely with one of the principals there, Sandy Hatter, whom I knew as a student of mine in St. John Fisher College, where I taught in the doctoral program. She did a dissertation on how ninth grade students dropped out of school, male black students. That was her sample that she used for her dissertation. And she found that there was a clear relationship and connection with failing the algebra test in ninth grade with the dropout rate of these students. They would take them again and again, and they would leave school. So we had many conversations about all of the issues facing these students in Yonkers. But I also spoke to all of the counselors in Yonkers. I was invited to speak to the guidance counselors in Yonkers and learned a great deal about the communities there. I also visited the charter school where there was much concern, both by the charter school and, of course, by Yonkers. And I think the charter school issue is still one that is of concern. However, I have to say that the superintendents there have done incredible things. That graduation rate, moving where it did, has meant a great deal. So I have had relationships in Yonkers, and there is, unfortunately, as with many of the city school districts, there is this issue of inequitable kinds of situations where people live, the location, and the schools they go to. And so that's something that I think that the former superintendent, who was there for many years, has dealt with, and I know the new superintendent is dealing with that too, to ensure that there are more opportunities. And the My Brother's Keeper program there is very, very strong. So I have had relationships throughout.
Thank you, Madam Regent. Senator Mayer.
Thank you, Dr. Wills, for being here. Great to work with you on a regular basis. Thank you for your availability on issues in our overlapping district all the time. As you read what's happening in Washington today, direct modifications or changes to the U.S. Department of Education's projects and funding, aside from what the Board of Regents, Counsel's Office, and staff has advised you, do you have your own ideas of what the board or New York State should be doing in preparation for the likely loss of funds and modifications of program requirements?
Well, I will tell you that it keeps all of us up at night, what will become of our education program. We have many of our employees in our education program, many of the professionals, highly skilled, highly trained, devoted, and dedicated people whose positions are funded by through federal grants. Many of your school districts, all of them probably, with Title I directors, special ed directors, many of those positions are funded through the education department. And therefore, the services that parents and their students will receive will be impacted. There is no question that if these funds are not directed to the schools as they are supposed to be, there will be problems. And you know, it's interesting because regionalization was a subject that I know had, there were varying opinions on it. But in a sense, what the commissioner was doing was preparing people for thinking differently about how we will manage in different times. This was really this had a lot of foresight. So, there are opportunities for sharing that may help us with some of these issues. However, this is an enormous problem. This is not just each individual district fending for itself. We have to have a plan. How do we find ways to fund the kind of school districts that our communities expect? People will be surprised. However, I hope, and I'm hoping that there will be a response, a resistance by the parents, when they realize that their public schools that they value so much are endangered. Now, not all of the schools in my region are as affected as some, and we know that. Yonkers is a school district that would be critically affected. And there are many others, Mount Vernon, and many of the others upstate will be affected because they receive a tremendous amount of aid. And some of that aid is federal aid. I think what we have to focus on are the goals that we have for our students, the graduation measures, the kinds of things we want to see our students achieve. And with the teachers that we have now, and the workforce we have now, we have to figure out ways to manage this should it come to pass that we lose this aid. I will tell you, though, that there are many employees. The things that we're doing at the state level really require such skill. We're looking at all of the data. For example, just the simple thing. We're trying to raise funds so that we can find out about the arts programs in our schools. Who has them? Who doesn't have them? Where are the certified teachers in art? And that requires a data collection piece. It's $300,000 that we're asking for to do this. But there's also the skill of the people who are doing this and the kinds of things they do. We have to remember that we have this workforce, and they have been diligent because we have an outstanding leader in our commissioner and in our chancellor. Outstanding. And this is the kind of dedication that it will require And there is, as I said, there has been a vision ahead to see what may need to be done. But the one thing about New York State and the area that I serve is that there is this tremendous variety of resources that school districts have. Some are, well-equipped to manage. Others will be very fraught.
Thank you, Madam
I'm
Regent.
sorry, Mr. Chair, I just want to acknowledge my colleague, Senator Monica Martinez has joined us. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman Otis.
Thank you, Regent Wills, and pleasure to see you. We've known each other for a long time, and I'd just say, so if people hear it, how engaged you are, if they haven't already figured it out, in the many districts in the region, and what a great job you do. I appreciate that, and we talk often, and you're always accessible. I knew you first when you were a superintendent. You were an outstanding superintendent. Would be very interested to know how you characterize the state of engagement between SED and the regents and school districts today, and superintendents, when it comes to policy pivots that the regents are trying to implement.
So I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at here, but I will try to assess. Right now, there is significant communication between State Education Department and our local districts. This was not the case when I was a superintendent. I will tell you that straight out. I know because you couldn't really communicate with state ed in the way we do now. If someone calls me, if a superintendent calls me with an issue, I can talk to the commissioner. I can talk to people in the state. They will call back. They will call the superintendent. They will support them. There is tremendous access. There is tremendous engagement. And this is something that did not take place. When I was a superintendent, the commissioners were distant in many respects. Now, there is continual communication. The commissioner appears at our Lower Hudson meetings when needed. There is a realization and an understanding of the issues that districts face. And, recently I had a call from a superintendent, and it was a case of the regents that were being given during that week, and a student had a cell phone in the room, and that is against the rules of the regents to have it during the regents exam. There are lots of rules when you're taking the regents, lots of rules, and the test might have to be eliminated, might not, and the superintendent was quite concerned. Why? This child was desperate. He was not a documented student. He was afraid of what, he had to have his phone with him. He was terrified of what would happen at home. And the superintendent called me. I said, I will tell you, we know that we've turned a page in our society, so I'm with you to help you and to help that young man. And then I called the commissioner, and the commissioner called him back. The young man did not pass the exam based on the exam, but it was not because of the cell phone. And this is the kind of this caring ethic that we must continue to nourish right now in our schools, because we have social studies teachers who are afraid to teach. Why can't we teach about slavery? I just went to the museum yesterday with a group of my fellow regents. We visited our state museum. It's an incredible museum, by the way, and Michael Mastroianni has just changed things beyond recognition. That the kinds of programs he has, thousands of people are coming, children, and we saw some of the artifacts of Black History Month. We had a chance to go upstairs. I urge you to ask for a visit to see some of the, for example, the places where, in the Adirondacks, where there was a Black colony, and it was created so that they could vote, so that African Americans could vote in New York. We have to know about our history. I never learned this when I went to school here in New York State. And There was a group that was formed to give these people, these black residents of New York, $250 worth of land, and that's what they needed in order to vote. And so there were hundreds up there, maybe more than hundreds. I don't remember the exact number. But we were able to see that. This is what we need to learn, and our teachers need to be able to teach it. And when I see the fear that teachers have now of what they say, this concerns me greatly. We have to protect our teachers.
Thank you for your answer. Assemblyman Weider.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Regent Wells. Nice to see you here. I have a two-part question. What should I say to constituents of the 97th Assembly District, which includes the East Ramapo School District, that have lost trust in the State Education Department, and particularly in the Commissioner, to say the least? The Commissioner, in her ruling recently, has ordered the school district to increase taxes in opposition of what the voters approved. In her ruling, page number 6, she cited these reductions, though drastic, left the district with a $20 million deficit. As a result, she instructed the school district to increase the budget with, I believe, over $5 million in opposition of what the taxpayers approved. A little later, a couple months later, the monitors installed by the Commissioner and by the State Ed has found a surplus of $30 million. I can assure you, every other day I will get a phone call of a constituent requesting when they will get their money refunded in lieu of the district finding the $30 million. But the question is a much bigger question. How do we restore that trust when we have State Ed on one hand saying the district has a deficit of $20 million, then State Ed with the monitors saying literally a couple of months later that the district has a surplus of $30 million. My other part of the question is, and that also pertains to the trust of the district, in the recent draconian equivalency guidelines by the State Education Department, constituents of the 97th Assembly districts feel that they were not listened to when the State Ed went on a statewide listening tour. They felt the regions didn't listen to them, and therefore there is a lack of trust. What should be my answer to them?
Well,
This is
he hasn't given you all that much time to reply, but as you feel, try to give him a solid answer.
I will, because I think this is one of the most critical issues we're facing as a state. And it has to do with this notion we have, this belief, this tenet of local control. And there has to be also a sense of fairness, justice, and what is right. Over at least a decade, they're not, the citizens of East Ramapo did not increase their budget at all. And yet the numbers increased in the district. And as the numbers of students with more needs increased, you had the need for more resources. And unfortunately, what happened was we have lost, as I mentioned earlier, a fine district, the opportunities for students to reach that goal of a good life, the students who go to the public schools. And that had to be remedied. Now, when you talk about the money that was found, the reason the money was found, that the commissioner was absolutely adamant that there be a forensic audit of the district, and the Attorney General was involved in that decision as well, to have an audit, to see what was really happening there and with the monies. There was a change of the financial monitor as well. There were many actions that were taken in order to assure that resources would start to go to the students who came into that district without the resources on their own and would need the district to have more in terms of funding from the people who live in that district. I understand that people who you serve might feel the way they do, especially when you're tying that to substantial equivalency. But we have an obligation here to obey the state law, which is that the students who go to private schools need to learn the basic English in order to be able to make choices in their future lives. That is what the state law says, and that is what we have to obey. And I think I hear you saying that this is difficult for you to communicate. But it needs to be said that we have an obligation. That's why we're here. That's what the regents are here, to make sure every student has the opportunity. That's what we're talking about. Equal opportunity and resources. And the way the system worked, it did not provide that, and does not, for those students. You're shaking your head. I understand.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you for being here, Regent. Thank you for your service. Okay, we appreciate the time you've given us and your value to the Regent and Board of Regents is well known and shared, by the way, by the Commissioner. We thank you, and we'll be in touch very shortly. Have a good day. The next person we're going to be with is Regent Prats from Region Number 2, Brooklyn. We're an hour behind schedule, folks. Not that that makes a difference.
Okay.
Mr. Otis, we'll cry, but we'll try to continue without you. I did mention it too, you know. That Ralph Lauren. Regent Pratt, thank you very much for being here today. I was just referring to your jacket, okay, and that is a Ralph Lauren. Is that correct?
It is, sir.
It is a fashion statement, and it looks quite nice. Thank you for being here today. Regent, we're glad you're here. We just want to have a conversation. We want you to tell us about yourself, and it's only been a year that you've been serving, and how you've enjoyed that year, why you want to continue, and then when we listen to you, we'll ask you a couple of questions. One further thing, we've had regents and people applying who've told us about themselves at great length, okay? And while we understand that they have an awful lot to say, we would please try to limit yourself to the 3 minutes.
I won't even go the whole 3 minutes. How about
There
that?
you go, and I'll hold you to that.
Okay.
You got it.
Well, first of all, good morning, members of the Senate and Assembly. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you, and I'd also like to express my gratitude for allowing me the opportunity to fulfill Dr. Cashin's last year of her term, and to serve the 2nd Judicial District, also known as Brooklyn. It has been a really rewarding experience and a huge responsibility to be able to serve the students, the parents, and actually the state as a member of the entire Board of Regents. I came to this position, when I came to you guys last year to talk to you, I came to this position as a New York City public school parent. And for me, I also have a child with an IEP, and being someone who has dealt with policy as being a former chief of staff in the Assembly and working on education policy and being the liaison to the State Education Department along with the Board of Regents, it's different serving in the capacity of being a regent. It has been extremely rewarding and has allowed me an opportunity to really gain a lot of knowledge about how it is we can actually help our students, help our teachers, help our parents, and to see the best and the brightest. New York State is so fortunate to have really great teachers, some really great schools, but some amazing students who just have the ability to learn given the opportunity and the chance to be in the right environment with the right teachers, with the right leadership in the school. And also, at this point in time, to also be able to serve on the Board of Regents with Chancellor Young, leadership matters, and with Commissioner Betty Rosa, people who have been very dedicated to making sure that our students across the state have all the tools and opportunities to be able to succeed. And also, we want people to stay here in the state of New York. I have been very fortunate to be able to go into so many different schools and to see there's also a lot of disparity, but also there are a lot of things that give me a lot of hope. Some of these schools are under-resourced, but the people inside those school buildings, man, they are so dedicated. And there was a saying that I grew up, which is making $1 out of 15 cents. And a lot of these schools, they make $1 out of 15 cents. And they embrace these students and provide them with so much love, care, and actual dedication to actually learning and developing these kids who actually have the gift of just wanting to learn. So again, thank you for the opportunity. You have my resume, you have my letter from last year, my letter from this year, and I am open to taking any questions and trying to be as expedient as possible because I know we're behind time.
Thank you, and thank you for waiting out there. It must have been endless, or seemed like endless. Listen, you've just talked that you visited the schools and you've noticed disparities and schools that were under-resourced. Tell us, why are they under-resourced? I think, at least I hope, we have given the schools throughout the state of New York an ample amount of funding to run the programs. Tell us what you saw and possibly lead us to how we can correct it.
Well, some of the things that we cannot change are some of these students are in school buildings that were built decades ago, and it's very difficult to retrofit a school building. And it's also, we have class sizes, there are kids with there's classes with 33 students in there. And the classes are really cramped. And they also don't have opportunities to have, so some of these schools are overcrowded. They don't have lunchrooms, they don't have assemblies, they don't have a theater, they have maybe a theater program, but they don't even have a stage. And so what I mean by that is that's what I mean by making $1 to 15 cents. You have the people inside the school buildings who are just making it work, and their kids are doing really, really well. And then we have situations where we have, 4 different schools located in one building. And kids being located in one building, everyone's trying to share these various different resources, and that's what I mean. So some of the things are not just about the actual funding, but also there are just situations where there's not much else that you can do. And we have this class size mandate, which I think is great, because it is very difficult for a teacher to teach 33 kids in a classroom, and you have 12 of them who are struggling, 8 of them who are doing extremely well. You have all these other people in the middle, and you have all these other needs. And so I think that we need to be really cognizant about how it is we are utilizing the resources that we have, but also the restrictions that we have based on circumstances that are really outside of the control of the people who are inside the building.
Thank you. Assembly, Ranka Smith.
Thank you. It's so good to see you. I can't tell you, I was the most excited about when you got appointed last year, and I'm even more excited that you're back to try to go again for another 5 years. But I say that because I think that you represent a lot of families like me, young parents. I know you have children that are school-aged, and I think that that's, I don't want to say, it's a different perspective that on the board. So my question is, over the last year, and also I like that you came from the legislature as well, so you know how we operate on this side of the street. But over the last year, what things have you picked up during these meetings and during your travels? I'm really interested.
What I find is that I don't think a lot of the information gets to parents. I think that we can do a better job of communicating where our children are, how they're developing through the process, starting from September. I think that we could do a better job, and there are so many more tools that are out there that we could possibly use to help keep parents informed. People are busy. Parents are busy. People are coming home, they're trying to put dinner on the table, and then they're trying to do homework. And then, then people get a report card, and then they see where their kid is, and they're like, how do I get here? But if we're able to give them some other tools to allow them to be able to track progress, I think that would be much more beneficial. I'd also say, too, there's so many great things that are happening around the state, and there's so many wonderful programs. I mean, even like yesterday, we have a presentation, and I said, please send those things to me. There are different award programs that are going on. There are different internships that are happening. There are different camps that are happening. And what happens is most people don't have the time to do independent research to figure out what's best. And so I think we could do a better job of letting people know what some of the things that the legislators already funded that people could take advantage of.
That's great. Thank you.
Assemblywoman Hyman.
Good to see you, Ms. Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have a couple of questions. The first question is, the Chancellor and the Commissioner did the tour of New York City regarding mayoral control, so I wanted to get your take on it, being that in a couple years we'll have to vote on it again. And the second question is, in a short span of the year, what do you think the Regents needs to work on immediately? If it was your opportunity to prioritize, what would you say would be the first thing the Regents should be tackling?
Okay, let me do that one first.
Okay.
I would say to you, the thing that we need to work on first is getting this Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations implemented as soon as possible. We have so many students who go through 12 years of education, and then they come to their last year, they've taken a Regents exam 3 times. And now here they are. They may have test anxiety, they may have issues with not being diagnosed with dyslexia or whatever have you. And then they come to this final exam, and as a result of not being able to pass it, they go through all these 12 years and they end up without a diploma. And a lack of a diploma doesn't allow you to do so many things, including getting gainful employment or being able to move into the middle class. So if it were up to me, And these are things I talked to State Education about. How can we, once we get this approved, the recommendations approved, how can we hurry up and get that done? Because that would benefit so many students. Another thing too was to take away, some kids get an IEP diploma, some people get a local diploma. It would just eliminate all that. Kids at Dalton, Trinity, they don't take the Board of Regents exams, but they get a diploma that's very well recognized. And that opportunity should be given to all students across the state. So that would be my first priority. I'm sorry, I missed your first question. Oh, well, the one thing. Mayoral control. There was a tremendous report that was done on mayoral control. And I think that the one thing that I don't see that we have is more parent participation. And I think that that's a deficit in the way the current setup is. And so I would say to you that I think that we have New York City is very different than other places. I lived upstate New York, lived in Syracuse, very different the way that people operate there. We have a lot of participation in New York City on the basic level of community boards, and also be able to serve on your educational board would be a tremendous asset, I think. More voices at the table, more diverse voices at the table, I think we make better decisions.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Burrows.
Good morning.
I'll turn it off. Good morning. In your first, let me say thank you for being here, and very appreciative for the wait because it was grueling, I know. So, in your first year, what has some of the things that you've dealt with that you could see to maybe move in a different direction that may be antiquated? I know you spoke about, not being able to communicate well. I see that in a lot of arenas. But what would you suggest is something to rectify that? So that's rectifying the communication issue, but also what are some things that you see that you could really, you think you could expound on or make better that may be antiquated?
Sure. I think that one of the things I serve on, there's a couple committees that I really have enjoyed serving on. One of them is the cultural education. I think it's hugely underfunded. We have so many wonderful institutions. As you all know, we oversee all the cultural institutions in the state, hugely underfunded. And there was a request to add $10 to mortgage transactions to help the State Museum of New York. That would be a tremendous asset for all of us. I think that it is, we're kind of like a little short-sighted on how much cultural education really means. I mean, you even think about how much music means in your culture, your family's culture, and how it really has an opportunity to really spark a lot of curiosity, educational curiosity, academic curiosity. So I think that one of those things I think that we are short-sighted on is cultural education. I'd also say one of the things I see that's a little antiquated or a little bit, that I think my voice brings a value to is I serve on the Committee on the Professions. And we license and discipline 54 different professions. And I think my lived experience being on that committee has had a positive impact on some of the disciplinary cases as well as some of the licensure, because my lived experience may be different from others. And I think that I look to allowing people to have a second chance and knowing what that does for people, knowing what that does for our economy, I think has been a value add.
Thank you. One last one. Where do you stand on, I guess, trying to resolve the issue when it comes to charter schools and public schools, when it comes to the funding process?
So there's two things. One of them is the State Education Department, we have a limited number of charters, and SUNY has more charter that they can give out. the standards from the State Education Department that the Board of Regents is over seems to be one that holds people to a much higher standard. And so people know that if they come to us, they're going to be held accountable to make sure that our children learn. There are several charters that do a really good job, and then there are others who may have a 23% rate of reading for their students, and that to me is like a major problem. The funding piece of that is, I think that you all have the purse strings. You have legislation, you have regulations that you can put in place that would help us. And so that's more so in your court than anything I can do on the Board of Regents.
Thank you. We have been joined at the table by Assemblyman Charles Levine. To close, Ms. Simon.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today, and thank you for being my regent in Brooklyn and a neighbor. I have a question about just, as a legislature, we pass laws, and the Board of Regents sometimes passes regulations. It's not clear to me, because we have this 732 school districts, that the school districts get the memo, right? So that there are regulations that have been passed that aren't being followed. There are laws that are passed that aren't being followed. That seems that the communications to the school districts maybe is a letter sent to somebody and it's put in a file somewhere. What, if anything, do you believe is a way that we could improve the responsiveness to regulations and laws that have been passed by the school districts?
I will tell you that many of us, my colleagues, my Regent Wells, who came before I did, she holds almost a monthly meeting with all of her superintendents. I have also held a meeting with all of my superintendents, and it's a way to share information, it's a way to get out information, and so I'm not exactly sure who's not adhering to what the regulations are. I think that when you say that's going into a file, everyone has a reporting requirement to the State Education Department. And so if there is, there's normal guidance that's actually given out. I can tell you, there have been a lot of increase in the amount of communication that actually goes out in newsletter, as well as the commissioner puts out a monthly report to all the superintendents and all school leaders. So I think that, and I've seen that over the last probably like 7 or 8 months, since the beginning of this school year. I've seen a huge increase in the amount of communication coming from the State Education Department. So I think that you may see things that haven't improved. Maybe that was in the past, but I can just say, because I asked to be put on all those communications. Please send me anything that gets sent out. I like to know what's being sent out, so that I'm also up to date on it. Because someone asked me a question, I like to at least know and be informed.
Thank you.
Regent Pratt, I thank you very much for being here. I thank you for your patience waiting before you came in to see us, and your patience and your answers were nicely concise, and we appreciate that. We will be in touch very shortly, I'm sure.
Thank you
Have
so
a
much.
good day.
Thank you for the consideration for a full 5-year term. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next interviewer will be another sitting regent. The last of the ones we're interviewing today, Regent Roger Catania. Regent Catania, how are you today?
I'm very good.
Thank you for waiting. I'm sure it was a long wait, but we're glad you're here today. You were only here a couple years ago. You're back again.
3 years, so almost 3
3
years,
years it is. It
yes.
seemed like only 2.
It does seem like a short time.
Needless to say, we'll be asking you to please tell us a little bit about yourself, how these last 3 years have been, and what you feel about the Regents and why you want to continue. And then we'll ask you a few questions. We're trying to keep this nice and casual and want you to relax and just give us a short statement. Try to stay with the 3 minutes. We've had some challenges
I've
on
heard
that
that
today.
the goal is 3 minutes, and I'm gonna go
Okay,
for it.
but I'm sure you'll be great. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. So prior to serving on the Board of Regents, I enjoyed a long career in public education. That's over a course of 35 years. I've worked as a teaching assistant, a coach, a teacher, a school counselor, and then as a school superintendent. And I retired as school superintendent in 2021. I've also taught students at the elementary level, the middle level, the high school level. I've taught in college, and I've taught in graduate school. Throughout these years, I've prioritized the interests of my students first and foremost. As a regent, I've made every effort to bring my personal experience and my perspective to this statewide role. Now, I'm proud to be a member of this Board of Regents and to be associated with Chancellor Young, with Commissioner Rosa, and with my other colleagues on the board. I believe that this Board of Regents takes our responsibility very seriously, and I think that we carry out those responsibilities with integrity. Since becoming a regent, I've put my experience to work as a member of the P12 Education Committee, of the Higher Education Committee, on the Committee of Professions, and as co-chair with Regent Wills for the State Aid Committee. So I'm proud to be a part of the board, and especially that we make equity, access, and opportunity in education our highest priorities. I grew up downstate, but for the past 28 years, I've been a resident of the North Country, and that's where I've lived, that's where I've worked, and that's where I've raised my family. I think this helps me to represent the interests of rural schools and all of our institutions in the North Country, while also understanding and acting in the best interests of the entire state of New York. So thanks for considering my application to serve the people for 5 additional years and to serve, of course, the children of our state who, as I said before, are our highest priority.
Thank you very much, Regent Catania. A nice, concise statement by you. I appreciate that. Listen, I'm personally concerned in regards to the cell phones in schools, the debate that's yet to come, I guess, on it. The governor seems to want to go one way, and there are other opinions on that. I'd be interested in your views on, on how cell phones
Cell
should
phone
be
issues have been with
regulated.
us for many, many years in school. Certainly I share other people's concerns with the distraction and, of course, with some of the issues surrounding cyberbullying, et cetera. So this is a big issue, right? I would say that the disagreement that I think you're referring to is a matter of degree, not of two dramatically different sides, right? I think that we all share that in common, that concern. I think the question is whether or not we, as a state, will determine for all schools and all students a complete ban, or whether to empower students, whether to allow their voice to be heard on this issue, right? And I think when their voices are heard, as we find in so many of the different ways that we invite their perspective, It's done very thoughtfully and very responsibly from a perspective that matters the most, right? We are looking out for the interests of students. I believe that we should invite their input as well. So, you know, I know that our commissioner has spoken to this point. I share her concern here. I share this perspective of allowing districts some local control so that they can determine for themselves, based on the input of their students, their families, their faculty, of everybody, to be able to do things what is in the best interests of their particular school and of their students. So yes, I would like to see policies from every school district addressing the issue of distractions from cell phones. I would, but I would like to see every district, you know, have some flexibility and leeway to be able to make those determinations for themselves.
Thank you, Regent. You know, I have a bill that's coming out on that, and it's almost exactly what you said. Very good. So I'm happy. But at any rate, Assemblyman Smith.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Regent.
Good to see you, too.
You've been on the board for 3 years, so thank you for your service. One of the things that you kind of just touched on, and I represent Long Island, which is a different neck of the woods than the North Country. But there has been some conversation, I think a bit of confusion. I've tried to clear it up on Long Island about regionalization. A lot of the schools on Long Island opted out, not a concern. But I am curious because in the North Country, you have a lot of rural areas. What kind of conversations are happening right now that are, you know, the regionalization may allow to facilitate cooperative agreements? And is that something you support?
Yeah, the answer is yes, and I'll say that in the North Country, there are many conversations going on about a regionalization. And I say that with the understanding that North Country school districts are very experienced with regionalization kinds of conversations. Now, regionalization, as we're discussing it right now, is sort of, you know, broad regional discussions that are and that are very structured, right? And so that's different. But the idea of sharing services is something that small and rural districts have been doing, you know, somewhat out of necessity and somewhat out of you know, positive desire to make a difference for kids. You know, in my experience as a school district superintendent, we've had lots of opportunities to share. So, you know, sharing teachers with other districts when need be, because, you know, because of circumstances when either there isn't a teacher or we don't have the funding to be able to pay for a 1.0 FTE that we have to have a 0.5, and two districts can share that and make that work. Of course, we use the BOCES widely in the North Country. One of our most active experiences, I would say, has to do with athletic team sharing. And small school districts absolutely are fully invested in sharing athletic situations. And as I like to say, you know, this can happen almost anywhere, and you'd be surprised. You know, where I live and where I worked as school superintendent, hockey is king. And there was no greater rivalry in the North Country than one between the Lake Placid Blue Bombers and the Red Storm from Saranac Lake. And you would think that, you know, that wall was so high that it could never be penetrated. But about 6 or 7 years ago, when the numbers for hockey were starting to decline and people recognized that that was going to continue, and when we recognized that we had 13 and 14-year-olds playing high school hockey who, with the potential of getting injured, there was a movement to combine those two teams, and we successfully did that, so that today there's one hockey program. There's no one. It's not a Blue Bomber team, and it is not a Red Storm team. It is the SLP.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Assemblyman Burrows.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just a comment. It's just my personal view as a former educator. I agree the cell phone is an issue in the classroom, and so I think it's more of a hindrance than it is the possibility of being able to be used as a tool to help the students. Most of the parents who have complained about them not having them or the school wanting to ban them have cited reasons as they will not be able to communicate with their children. And before cell phones, my parents they were able to communicate with me.
Mine too.
And so are every other parent. So I don't know is that the reason why, but it's just a comment. You don't have to respond, but to me, it was more of a nuisance than it was helpful. And being a teacher who had the command in my classroom, even when they were used for educational purposes, they still can sometimes be, a nuisance. And so for another teacher who may not have a strong command of the classroom as I did, I understand the problems that teachers have with them, and I don't think that they really serve the purpose, especially when we provide today. Most schools provide technology devices where they can use to surf the internet anyway. So,
Thanks.
But no question. That's a good
comment.
statement, fine. Okay. Regent Catania, we thank you for your service. We thank you for your patience in waiting outside for such a long time. And we are glad you came here today and answered our questions. We are at an end on that. And so we say to you, you're free to go, and we'll be in touch very shortly with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
My daughter said no, do not ban the cell phones, but she doesn't have hers in school anyway.
You know
Her school
what it
does
is?
not allow them.
It's, I know the unions are calling for, and the governor blankets.
Yeah.
Leave it up to the districts. Let them camp and make their, they must have a policy, but they gotta make one. Some will put it in. Every district should be allowed to come up with their own little policy, rather than blaming it on us that we've forced them on it. Okay, the next person we're gonna see is from Judicial District Number 10, okay, which is Long Island. And I believe I have before me Felicia Thomas Williams.
That is me.
Ms. Williams, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your patience waiting outside. I'm sure you had a little bit of a wait. I'm Assemblyman Mike Benedetto, head of the Education Committee of the State Assembly, and I'm with my fellow colleagues. I won't introduce everybody because we do want to move along, but they're all interested in education and what you have that would be beneficial to the Board of Regents. So we're going to have a little conversation here today. We ask you to begin that conversation by speaking for about 3 minutes. Try to keep it short if you can, about yourself and what you, why you're running for consideration. And then after that, we'll ask a couple of questions of you, okay? Okay, so please, it's just a conversation. Make sure the green light is lit on the base of your, the microphone.
Oh, the green light is lit.
It is lit. Then you're on, and
Very good.
go get them.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss my candidacy for the New York State Board of Regents, representing the 10th Judicial District. I am honored by the prospect of contributing to the continued success of New York students and families as a member of the board. There are several reasons why I'm seeking this position. Above all, I am committed to advocating for and advancing high-quality education for New York students. Although I'm retired from principaling, I remain deeply passionate about serving in education. My work on the Government Relations Committee for SANES and as the New York State representative for the National Association of Secondary School Principals allowed me to engage with legislators, senators, assembly members, and their constituents in support of policies and initiatives that benefit children, educators, and the broader community. These roles also provided me with invaluable opportunities to collaborate directly with the Commissioner of Education, offering an educator's perspective on key issues. We're at a pivotal moment to transform and reimagine the future of K-12 education, expanding our vision to encompass the entire educational journey, from preschool through to technical schools, colleges, and beyond. The New York State Department of Education's graduation initiative and the development of the Portrait of a Graduate represent significant efforts to promote greater equity in education, informed by a broad stakeholder engagement, including parents, educators, administrators, school staff, higher education representatives, and the business community. I am particularly eager to serve the 10th Judicial District, a region rich in educational opportunities. Long Island, home to 127 public school districts, serves over 476,000 students, along with roughly 230 private and parochial schools that educate over 53,000 students. With its intensive higher education options, including 17 four-year colleges and universities, 8 2- and 3-year junior colleges, and 5 professional institutions, Long Island boasts an impressive track record, with approximately 88% of high school graduates continuing their education at higher ed institutions. Since its establishment in 1784, the Board of Regents has played a pivotal role in shaping the educational landscape of New York State, ensuring that every student has access to a high-quality, equitable, and inclusive education that prepares them for lifelong success. It would be a privilege to continue the legacy to serve our state as the member of the Board of Regents. Thank you once again for considering my candidacy. I look forward to answering your questions.
Well, thank you. You were the first one to speak today under 3 minutes. And you spoke well, too, and I thank you for being here. We'll begin the questioning by my colleague in the Assembly, Ms. Hyman.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
So you're retired and you want to be a regent, the full volunteer position, and the weight that comes with being a regent setting policy for the state education department is a tremendous one. So thank you for being here today. If you can talk a little bit about being on the Brentwood Principals and Supervisors Organization, because knowing the Brentwood School District and some of the challenges that have come with that, how you able to circumvent it, and also being that you're from Wheatley Heights and Wyandanch is right next door, and knowing the issues that the Wyandanch School District has had for years, navigating that and being around leadership with the school district, if you can talk a bit about that and just the challenges and how you were able to overcome.
Wow, so there are several challenges, but you began with my position in the Brentwood Principals and Supervisors Organization. I was active as an elected official of that for 15 years. I served as both initially the secretary and then as the vice president, and that afforded me the opportunity to work with the Government Relations Committee for SANES. I eventually, because of the work that I did in Brentwood, was tapped to work with the Government Relations Committee. One of the things that I got to do in that role is to advocate for legislation that supported the Brentwood School District, supported districts like Wyandanch, and supported districts that needed additional help, be it funding or be it advocacy. Mental health was one of the proponents that I talked about extensively, as well as funding for Title I. In marginalized school districts, there is a dire need for support. And it was my honor to be able to serve by having a voice from a boots on the ground perspective, if you will, about the needs and to tell stories that supported why this funding is needed and why we need to provide specifically what's needed for communities that are marginalized or perceived as marginalized, because I think we just have a different way of doing things. And that's how I navigated my way through dealing with a lot of the issues. I had a voice. I used it.
Thank you. We have been joined, by the way, on the table by Assembly Members Schiavone and Solages. Next, we go to Senator Mayer.
Thank you, and welcome. I'm sorry I missed the very beginning of your comments, but as you know, the Board of Regents at this moment, given what's happening in Washington, is playing an incredibly pivotal role in helping us formulate the policy of response to the not only loss of funds, but all the programmatic changes that are threatened or likely to occur. Do you have some ideas of how the regions could be as proactive as possible in keeping New York sort of a safe place to both teach and to learn, notwithstanding what we're likely to face?
Yes. So first, I want to just say that we're very fortunate that New York education has been held at such a high priority in New York State, and we're very fortunate to have that. We're also not unfamiliar with decreasing and cutting funding or the threats. Not to make light of it, but there's been controversy over that for many years. And I know we need to protect the functions and services and resources that are needed. We can't control what DC does, but we can continue to have a voice in DC. We can continue to provide information about why programs are needed. I had an opportunity last October to present to the House regarding Title I funding, and I think it was a pivotal moment because we were able to give specific data on how the programs that were initiated helped our community, helped our students, helped them perform, and provided them with opportunities that they might otherwise would not have happened. And I think knowledge is key, making sure that you give our constituents the information that they need to make educated decisions is extremely important. I would probably want to work on how we could be more streamlined and efficient, and maybe that would be something that we could propose. But we can never lose sight of what the goal is to make sure that our children are provided with what they need.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that you've obviously thought about that issue and prepared to answer that question, because not everybody has. And I do appreciate you understand how big a deal it is for us in the legislature to face this, and we are looking for partners who get that as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Assemblywoman Solages.
Greetings. I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you, and I thank you for stepping up to the plate and applying to be a Board of Regents. So my first question is around technology. We're going through a technical revolution, and I want to know your comments on incorporating computer science into the New York State curriculum.
The STEM program has been so pivotal for the last few years, and I think that computer technology speaks to digital literacy, and without digital literacy, we can't move forward or be competitive in a global society. I know firsthand that we had a lot to do with implementing digital literacy programs so that students could be aware of not only how to navigate their way through technological advances, but also internet and safety security. Social media has been, unfortunately, the source of information for a lot of students. They've been misguided and misdirected. And also, it's been kind of dangerous because some of the things that they've been exposed to or some of the things that they've had to navigate their way through technologically, unfortunately, some of the students really just are not mature enough to navigate through. I hope that I'm speaking to your question when I'm saying there's so much to the technological there's so much to that, to technology and technological advancements and making sure that we stay current and current practices and that we're up to date and that we're providing children with everything that they need technologically and educationally.
I appreciate that. I'm going to move on to students with disabilities. You know, I see that some school districts are struggling with fully implementing IEPs and providing accommodations for necessary, educational learning. So parents and advocates often face delays, inconsistencies, and lack of transparency when securing the right of education for their kids. What are your thoughts about disciplinary actions or other initiatives that can be done to ensure that kids are getting education?
As a former special education teacher and one who was involved in the process of writing individual education plans, regarding, you made a couple of comments there, so I just want to break them
Whatever,
apart
your
if
general
you don't
thoughts.
mind.
Yeah, you know, we only have 30 seconds, so whatever you go.
Take as much time as you need.
I appreciate that. Special education students need to be provided with a level playing field just like everyone else. They need to be given everything that they need in order to be successful as a student, and period. Fortunately, I worked in the Brentwood School District, which has a huge special education population. In fact, I had the largest population of special education students in my building. And we were very accommodating. So whatever it is that we're doing right over there, I would certainly seek to find out and figure out how it is that we're having such great successes and other places aren't. You need to invest in all of your children, period. And if there's something that they need to be successful, that's what you need to provide. I hope that's not too succinct.
Thank you. Assemblyman Burrows.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. So I, too, am a former educator of students with disabilities. So, okay. So, kind of want to ask this question, but what's perceived, you made the comment about perceived marginalized districts, and I'll just throw, I don't know, I'll use your body gesture as an answer, but would a marginalized district be Half Hollow Hills East? Would Garden City be marginalized?
No.
What about Wyandanch? Would that be marginalized?
Perceived, yes.
Instead?
Yes, perceived.
Okay. So are you in support of modifying the process of which students go through for having a Regents diploma? And if so, what would be your idea on how students could attain a diploma in New York State?
Well, I think pathways to education, their pathway to learning should be defined by their passions, their ability. I think that there does need to be an opportunity for students to focus on what's in their best interest and what could help them to be the most successful, and that schools are paramount in making sure that we help children to reach those goals. But I want to go back to the comment you made about perceived. The reason that I made that comment is because schools like Brentwood, Wyandanch, Hempstead, and the like are often perceived as horrible places. And with marginalization, it's often aligned that those communities over there don't have good things coming out of them. And I have to tell you that given the opportunities, the Title I funding, all of the things that and there's still work to do. Those communities are great communities, and with support, they turn out great people. And that's why I always say, yeah, we get the marginalization piece, but I don't want any community to be defined as just being a marginalized community.
Okay. Final question. Where do you stand, or do you see an issue with the funding process of charter schools and the development as opposed to public schools? And some of the schools that you mentioned, do you see an issue with the process of how that can affect those districts?
Absolutely, I do. I know that it is the job of the regions to support public education, period. And I'm a true believer in supporting public education. And I do understand the want or the need for school choice. However, all schools need to be held accountable. They need to have the same expectations. They need to be evaluated in the same way. As long as, and my background, I've learned that charter schools take money out of the public school system, and that can't happen. We can't have money taken away from our children to support schools that it's taxation without representation. It's this, that they don't have the same checks and balances in place. And I find it to be problematic.
Thank you. And my apologies to Senator Bino, who I've overlooked. Please.
Good afternoon, Senator Bino.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here and for throwing your hat in the ring. So I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Member Burrow's question regarding charter schools. So Senate District 6 has a proliferation of charter schools. They collectively sent over 140, it's projected they'll send over $140 million to charter schools. Hempstead, in particular, is sending over $100 million to charter schools this year. The state regents, well, the SED, approved additional authority to charter schools, to a charter school in 2023-24 school year. They gave 125 additional placements or opportunities. In 24 to 25, an additional 75 for 200 additional students to be enrolled in a charter school. If we took the average, let's not even take the average, it's between $25,000 to $50,000 to educate a student. If we just took the lower end of that and multiplied that by the 200 extra students that they authorized, that is $5 million. That is significant. It's a disparate impact on public schools who, and listen, I'm with you, I understand parents want choice and the like, but at what cost to the children that stay in the public school? And so as a regent, what would you see your role in terms of making sure that saturation is considered in communities that have, on average, an 86% graduation rate? Hempstead has an 87% graduation rate. What do you see your role as the regent?
I see my role is making sure that we maintain the opportunity for those Hempstead School District to continue to grow with its graduation rates. I also think that my role as a regent is to examine the root cause of why people are flocking to these charter schools. I do know that charter schools have gotten support from community members because they want that school choice, and that is just the reality of the charter school initiative, if you will. I also see my role as making sure, I really want to focus on the public school. I really want to focus on what is it that's failing, for lack of a better word, or that's causing people to feel they need to go to a charter school.
Thank you.
Ranka Smith.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Glad
you,
to have
too.
you here. So we do have a bit of a challenge on Long Island. We're the 10th Judicial District, as you mentioned. We have about 3 million residents, which is twice as large as the next judicial district. And while it's not a problem for judges, because we could add judges, we only have one regent. So if you were to be added, I would advocate as a second regent, but that's a further conversation. What do you view the day-to-day operation? What would you bring to the table that might be different or in addition to what our current representation?
So honestly, I think that my experience, as I said in my opening statement, as the New York State representative for the National Association, as well as a member of Region 1 in Long Island, has afforded me an opportunity to develop relationships. So I already have the opportunity to work with several school districts on Long Island. I've already made connections with those schools, and of course I would want to go and have my ear to what's going on. It's very important to me to be informed, to be transparent, and to communicate. I think open communication and making sure that all stakeholders are at the table and have a say in what happens is important. And I see my role day to day is making sure that I'm in touch with that and that I have my ear to the ground.
And if I could, in a different direction, so the Brentwood School District, as you mentioned, we are seeing amazing things. My district is very close to Brentwood. I represent part of the town of Islip
Great.
as well. So I see what you're doing. I also see that it's one of the largest suburban school districts in the country. I think there's 17,000 students. That's huge.
That's correct.
And a good microcosm of districts across the state. So from that position you are now, already we've just met, but I know the good things that are happening in your buildings. What can you add to this position from that? As a practitioner, an in-service practitioner.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
I'm sorry. Maybe it's a bad question. The question more so is somebody who was in service or recently in service at the building level, how can you bring that to the table in the Regent's position?
Oh, my gosh.
Sorry.
So I really want to be able to support districts in their initiatives to support children. I really want to be able to have that, like I was saying before, that open communication. I see some of my day-to-day responsibility is showing up and having conversations with district, maybe having open forums, being involved in all of the meetings that are currently taking place, and maybe even introducing opportunities to have meetings, to have focus groups, to have, does that make sense?
no,
And
that's-
does it go in the direction of what you're talking about? So
I will tell you, I would definitely appreciate that as a Suffolk County resident. And again, we have, I think, 127 school districts on Long Island.
Yes, we
It's
do.
it's a heavy task,
huge.
but thank you.
Thank you. Senator Mayer,
Yes, sorry, I have one more additional question. You know, given your success in the district, can you talk a little bit about what you did to support teachers and how you addressed test scores and graduation rates in order to do well?
we had destination graduation, and I'll be very honest with you, I was a middle school principal, so I can speak more so from the middle school perspective of telling you that we did have an aligned trajectory from middle school to high school. I was on the Curriculum Advisory Council. Our Curriculum Advisory Council examines any new initiatives as well as any new curriculum endeavors that are being presented. In that role, I was able to learn about any of the materials that teachers wanted to use. Teachers had the opportunity to propose what it was that they saw fit as the next curriculum. So there are committees, you know, we have, and I know this, it's a lot, so I just want to put this as quickly as I can, but there are checks and balances that make its way up through the ranks and are evaluated by people who are committed to making sure that we are in favor of, or maybe having different perspectives on why it needs to go back. And then after the Curriculum Advisory Committee decides that it's worth putting forth to the superintendent then takes the helm and sends that to the Board of Ed. And I want to say that that's kind of like if you had a goal that needed to be attained in the role as a regent, right? You had a goal that needed to be attained. It may start out as a short-term goal. And then as you get more information, you realize, hey, wait a minute, the long-term trajectory of this requires these steps. And that is very much how we worked in Brentwood. You know, you might have started with a small idea, then we had an end game in mind, and then we made sure that we kept our focus on that end game and tried to take every pathway that we could utilize to get to that end game.
Thank you very much.
thank you. Assemblyman Schiavone.
Good afternoon, Ms. Thomas-Williams. Thank you for being here and stepping forward to perhaps be a region for the state of New York in the 10th Judicial District. I am from Eastern Long Island. In my district, in my assembly district, we have 25 school districts. I, too, was an educator of 32 years, so I appreciate those who have given their adult lives to education. Thank you, particularly the middle school stuff. My question is, you know, what's your philosophy on Long Island with a district so large, with 127 school districts? They run the gamut of large schools to small schools, so if you could speak to that.
May I please? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Stop the timer, my nerves.
You've been answering a number of questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to make sure that I understand what your question is. Was your question about the diversity of Long Island, or was it about
diversity of school districts as far as size, affluence?
So Long Island, as you know, is one of the most segregated places in New York as well as in the United States of America.
I do know that.
I had the opportunity to be a part of a cohort of administrators and educators that went to South Africa to do a study it examined the difference or likenesses of Long Island post-segregation and South Africa post-apartheid. I do think that the division is by design. I think that is very much aligned with property value, and as well as what that looks like is there are racial divides. And I do actually have something in mind that I've been thinking about regarding that. Obviously, this is something that I've worked on for a long time, and we've been involved in courageous conversations and think tanks on about how we could make that better. And I know that there have been tried and failed attempts to address that. But if we looked at businesses that are currently supporting districts within those district parameters, if we could maybe somehow figure out a way to allocate that kind of tax relief for communities that are different in size.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a lot of time. And
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, don't be. I like it. Could you give us a synopsis of your view between proficiency standards versus growth measures in education?
So I do think that we do absolutely need a system of evaluation where you can incorporate growth measures as well as reach certain standards of proficiency. I think that it is necessary to be proficient, but I also think that it has to be very clear. Measures need to be very clear. And once again, I talked about that end game. We need to know what students need to know and learn. And without being able to identify multiple measures of examining student growth, I think we have nothing. We have to be able to utilize a variety of sources to examine student growth.
Thank you. And Chair, if I could have one more quick question?
A quick question.
As far as charter schools in the state of New York,
Time's up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
As far as charter schools in the state of New York, I'm familiar with it. One of my districts has one. Is that the purview of the New York State Board of Regents or the New York State Legislature?
Oh, as I understand it, it's, when you're asking me if it's the purview of either, what do you mean by that?
Once they're formed, charter schools and the operating and of charter
It's not, I don't think it's the New York State Board of Regents, and I think it should be. I think that there need to be checks and balances, and they need to be held to the same accountability.
Thank you. Thank you for
welcome.
coming today.
Thank you. To close,
I have a follow-up question.
go ahead, Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So just a follow-up to that question. There are two entities that can authorize charter schools.
Thank you.
There's SUNY and there's the State Education Department. SUNY is the route most traveled. However, the State Education Department evaluates, along with SUNY, applications for forming the charter school. They can also review applications to increase its population, its student population.
That's SUNY or that's the legislature?
SUNY or the State
Okay,
Education Department.
thank you.
Earlier today, I mentioned that the State Education Department, which falls under the Board of Regents,
Yes.
allowed for 2 different expansions
Yes.
on a charter school.
Thank you.
Impacting Hempstead and other communities by allowing 200 additional students, although they knew there was a saturation. So my question earlier today was, what do you see the State Education Department's role when they have to review these applications that come in that is governed by the regents?
I appreciate you for that very
Okay,
much.
in terms of evaluating these applications based on saturation. Do you see that being the role, it is the role of the Regents, and I'd like to ask you how you would approach that.
So obviously, what needs to be done is a much deeper dive into what we're doing to support that public education system and what the needs are of that community. If it's saturated, then why are we continuing to fund and allow for the production of such?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
To close, Assemblyman Levine.
I enjoyed meeting you this morning.
Likewise.
It's in the last couple of days when I learned that you were going to seek consideration for the Regents. I had reached out to friends who are educators who think very, very highly of you.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you for being with us. So let me preface what I'm going to say by mentioning that I represent Northeast Nassau County. And I represent some of the most well-funded school districts in the United States. But I also, along with Senator Bino, represent the Westbury School District, and I represent the Glen Cove School District, which are often perceived as marginalized, which is something I resent terribly. I'm also married to a retired special education teacher who always taught in the public schools. So we share a passion for public education. So the question I just wanted to follow up with respect to is this. You had mentioned a creative idea, I think, about taxing businesses.
I did.
Commercial entities to help to equalize.
Correct.
And that's the real term, equalize
Thank you.
educational funding in school districts that struggle. And those school districts that struggle now are having an infinitely more difficult time, as you know, passing bonds. Even the Plainview Old Bethpage School District sought a bond just a few weeks ago, and it was defeated 2-1,
Wow.
which astounds
Yeah.
me. So can you flesh out a little bit what any other ideas you may have about helping us to fund public education in an area which, in terms of public education and elsewhere, otherwise, is very segregated?
So when I talked about that business plan, what my thought process was, I know that the way that many of the lines between districts and areas of residency have been meant to service areas that quite honestly do not benefit the marginalized communities.
I'm with you on that completely. I'm
Okay.
very aware of the lines between Wyandanch and Dix Hills.
Yeah.
But what other ideas do you have in 27 seconds, now it's 25 seconds, that can help that?
I think that we have to be very creative about getting funding sources from other places. I think that, I know that grants are an issue. I feel like I'm not giving a great answer right now because I didn't have time to think about that, and I
You
apologize.
take as much as you want.
So more ideas on how it is that we could help to provide funding for schools or help to equalize the base, is that what you mean? Well, in all honesty, you just mentioned that, Brentwood is one of the largest school districts in the country, one of the suburban school districts in the country. And so therefore, we have a need for more funding. And of course, the face that, Brentwood has with the immigrant population, with undocumented individuals, it's not just who's not making enough money to pay the taxes, it's who's there and pulling on the funding and not contributing. I think that that needs to be looked into as well, and I also think that some districts could be broken up. It's just a thought.
Thank you for your idea.
I'm not necessarily a proponent of that, but it is a thought.
I understand.
Okay.
Ms. Thomas Williams, I thank you for coming here today.
Thank you so
I thank you
much.
for your patience waiting outside for as long as you did. And you took all our questions and you answered them wonderfully. We thank you. We will be talking to ourselves about this, and you will know what we're doing in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank
In the meantime, go home safe.
I appreciate you. It
Bye-bye.
was nice to meet you all, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, I know. I know. We have one more person because Our next person at large apparently has dropped out. So our last person now for Judicial District 9 is Deborah Stern. And if it happens again, crumble up a paper and just throw it at me, that's all. Miss Deborah Stern, before me. Ms. Stern, I'm Assemblyman Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the State Assembly Education Committee, and I'm sitting at a table with my colleagues, both in the Senate and in the Assembly. Some are chairmen of various committees, some are members in other regards. They all have one thing in common. They're all concerned about education in the state of New York and quality education, okay? And that's why they're here today. You're here today applying for a very important position with the Regents of the state of New York, and we thank you for that, and we sure you will have quite great qualities to put forth. All we're going to do today is we're going to ask you, in a short amount of time that we kind of allocate to you, 3 minutes, tell us about yourself. Tell us maybe what you feel like you can do for the Regents if you get onto that board. And after which, we'll ask you, just some questions. Okay, we want you to relax and just be calm about it all.
Okay, fantastic.
You
Well,
got
good afternoon, senators and assembly members. Thank you for this tremendous opportunity. My name is Dr. Deborah Stern. I'm an educator, a charter school founder, and a lifelong resident of Westchester County. Public education has been the foundation for my family's success. I'm a public school graduate. My husband Charlie is a public school graduate. All 3 of our children are public school graduates. I've taken full advantage of New York educational opportunities, including attending New York's land-grant university, Cornell, and a couple of comprehensive private universities in the state, NYU and Teachers College at Columbia University. I've done research in our incredible public libraries like the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. I've embraced all that New York's educational system has to offer. When I received the call inviting me here today, I reflected. First of all, I thought it was a prank, but then I realized Stephen was a real person, and so I said, okay, it was a LinkedIn ad, but glad to see that somebody reads those things. I reflected deeply on the critical challenges facing our educational system, particularly our most vulnerable students. I bring 3 distinct vantage points to this reflection: that of a citizen invested in public education, a parent, like I said, who's navigated the systems, and as an educational advocate who's worked to expand opportunities for underserved students. These perspectives have shown me that in today's political climate, when our most marginalized students risk losing vital protections and support at the federal level, our work at the state level is more crucial than ever. When we discuss reforming state aid formulas, we're really talking about how to protect our Title I schools if federal funding diminishes. When we discuss equitable access, we're talking about ensuring students with disabilities receive the specialized support and resources they need to succeed. This isn't about equality, providing the same to all, but about equity, recognizing that different students need different levels of support to achieve similar outcomes. As a founder of a charter school serving predominantly underserved students, I've learned that thoughtful policymaking must go beyond merely removing barriers. We must proactively create systems that recognize and address the unique circumstances of each student population. A student with disabilities in the Bronx should have access to the same quality of specialized services as a student in Pelham in Westchester County. A Title I school facing potential federal funding cuts should have confidence that state-level policies will ensure their programs remain robust and effective. Ultimately, there are 2.5 million students whose educational futures depend on the policies that we, you, us, create and enforce. The Board of Regents holds unique policymaking authority that touches every aspect of education in our state, and I'm ready to bring my expertise in educational equity, strategic planning, and policy development to help ensure that every New York student, particularly those most at risk of being left behind, have access to excellent educational opportunities tailored to their specific needs. So I thank you for your consideration, and I welcome your questions.
But thank you so much for your statement and keeping it so nice and concise. Tell me, Amani Public Charter, where are you located?
Mount Vernon, New York.
Oh, okay. How long has it been going on?
14 years.
Oh, wonderful. How many students have traveled through?
We have 355 students now, so I'd say at least 6,000 to 9,000. That's probably not the right number, but it's a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have several questions for you. We're going to begin with Senator Meyer.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, same.
Question for you, are you still the executive director of the school?
I am.
If you were to get selected for the Regents, would you leave that position?
So I was looking at it, and I was waiting for your lawyers to flag it, actually, and since I'm not on the board, I'm just an employee of the institution. So I think it should be okay, but I guess that would have to be taken under consideration.
You personally would not see that as a conflict?
I don't see it as a conflict, and I've thought about it a lot. And I talked to, when Stephen called, I was like, this is what I do, are you sure? Listen, I wouldn't be on the P12 committee. The amount of actual direct business with the Amani Public Charter School is probably 0.1%. And so I would abstain for that or not be involved in that. The things that we do are larger than just that one thing, so it's just my job. I looked to see what the other jobs that Regents have. They have jobs at places. So I don't think it's a conflict.
No, I just wanted to raise it.
No, I appreciate that.
Secondly, I think you're well aware of the tremendous challenges of the Mount Vernon Public Schools right now. A significant funding shortage. They're proposing to close 3 elementary schools. If you were on the Regents, one of the challenges, should the Mount Vernon Public Schools have a monitor appointed, as a number of other districts have? Do you have an opinion about that?
So, yeah, I think it's a very terribly sad situation. And I've been involved in the Mount Vernon Public Schools for many years. So my husband was on it when my husband was on the school board and I was a PTA person. And I remember having meetings in my dining room with the superintendent at the time to create, and they were talking about creating a K-8 system. And he was like, that's not a good idea. And I'm like, that's not a good idea. And here we are. The adults haven't gotten it right for a long, long time. It's a crisis in leadership. And that's a lot of the reasons why I started Amani Public Charter School. And so I think that somebody has to come in and help the adults. It's not easy, but I see the effects of that every day because there are parents that come to my school because they're losing their school. And listen, there are 6,920 students that go to school, use this public schools in Mount Vernon. There are more young children than that in Mount Vernon. The community deserves good public schools. If this is the moment when somebody's going to come in and say, okay, we're going to have to help the adults, then I think that's critical and important, and I would support that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Apologize if I have to leave early, but I wanted to be able to ask my questions. Thank you.
It's good to see you, and not in the farmer's market, because we often bump into you at the Bronxville Farmers Market.
Senator Assemblyman Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
So applying for the Region at Large position would include representing, well, by definition, all parts of the state of New York. So I represent Long Island. We have a bit of an issue of the proliferation of charter schools, very saturated in many areas. I think some of my colleagues may bring up some concerns. In my particular area, I have 30 students in my district that go to a charter school, $400,000 follow them, and it's a challenge because, the school district has 11,000 students, so to educate 11,000 minus 30, it doesn't save us $400,000, so there's definitely a concern there. So now, with the view that you had as a founder of a charter school, what do you think, and when you went through the charter certification process, how do you think, because again, you would add a different perspective than we've seen on the Regents, what are the pros of that? Because I'll be honest, I'm looking at it a bit skeptically, but tell me why I'm wrong.
Sure. The main thing that my husband and I wanted to do when we started Amani was to create a school to keep people in the community. And so when we started charter school, we lived in Mount Vernon. I had 3 children. They went to public schools in Mount Vernon. We had lots of friends. I threw a lot of parties. Nobody used the public schools for generations. So my uncle, my cousin who's now in her 40s, she didn't use the public schools. People in Mount Vernon would go to private school. Anecdotal story, I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. At the time I was going to move, and the mayor at the time said, well, just move to another house in Mount Vernon and send the kids to private school like everybody else. Or, strangely, pay tuition at the local public school next door. And I was like, why would I do that? First of all, I have 3 children. The return on investment to paying for private school is very low, because those kids aren't getting a job after K-12 to be able to support me. I want to send them to college. And I looked at all my friends. They were nurses and police officers, our neighbors. It cracks the community. So I wanted to start Amani Public Charter School to keep people in the community. So you say that $4,000 goes away. No, it doesn't. Those children are...
Oh, I said 400,000.
400,000, right? Yeah, that's right.
It's a big...
I'm not giving numbers.
Yeah, no, sorry.
I actually am, but those children aren't going away. They're being educated in your community. It's just it's just changing the systems and just creating a new system. But they're still in your community.
Yeah.
And so that's what Amani, that's the idea behind Amani.
And maybe, you know what, maybe that's a different perspective. In my community, people view now that their high school taxes are going to now duplicate, so they actually feel they're building a second public school system that they then have to pay for 2 public school systems, which, but
yeah, but
my time has expired. I apologize.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know about your community, but in Mount Vernon, the people, the families were going to private schools they couldn't afford. And so there's dual system. There will always be a dual system. We talk about school choice. I had a choice. You have a choice. You can go to private school. There's dual systems. So I'm just creating a stronger public schools option in that community to keep people in the community.
Ms. Stern, were you here before us once before?
I was younger, thinner then.
And I had hair.
And not so many grays, yeah, 5 years ago.
And the reason why I say that is because I remember you impressing me then.
Okay.
And you have done so again.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Your charter school, how old are the kids?
Middle school, 5th through 8th grade.
Any problems with cell phones?
So cell phones is a never-ending, they're the devil.
Yeah.
They are the devil. And so for us, and it's interesting because I know that, I was just like looking at the state and what we want to do with the charter schools. And it's expensive, the yonder bags, all that kind of stuff. In 5th through 8th grade, we say you can't have the phones. We have little cell phone condos, I call them. The kids put their phones in the cell phone condos. And they're pretty compliant with that. Listen, my kids went to school in Pelham. They were allowed to keep their phones all day long. And then I would text my son and be like, why you text me back? I'm like, well, he has a phone. Why am I texting him? I get it, but it's just too much, So, but it's interesting because it shouldn't be that hard to get them up. Because again, the adults get involved. So it's expensive, you have the yonder bags, you have whatever. The kids can put the phones in a drawer in the classroom and then move on with what they're doing. The reality is, though, then we've put another screen in their hands because our schools are 1-to-1, so they have the computers. So it's interesting because we are putting them in front of screens anyway. But the cell phones, because of the social media and all those sort of things, it's the devil. So I would support keeping them out of the schools. But understand that's difficult.
Ms. Stern, I want to thank you sincerely for coming here today, for your interest in being a regent, for your obvious dedication to the students that you've taught. We appreciate you coming. We appreciate you answering our questions, and we'll be in contact with you very shortly.
Okay, great.
Thank you for coming in
Thank you
today.
so
Safe
much.
home. Having no more applications, we will adjourn for today and re-up again tomorrow morning at 10:15. So ends this day's proceedings. Thank you.